So, how did the United States and Iran become such bitter enemies? Today it almost feels inevitable. Two nations constantly at odds, always just one step away from escalation. But the reality is, it wasn't always like this. Not too long ago, these two countries were actually close allies. So what changed? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning. In the early 1900s, something incredibly valuable was discovered in Iran. Almost overnight, Iran became one of the most strategically important places on Earth, but there was a problem. Most of the money from that oil didn't go to Iran. Instead, foreign companies, especially British ones, took the majority of the profits. So while Iran had the resources, it didn't have the control, and naturally, it created resentment. Then World War II changed everything. Even though Iran declared neutrality, it didn't matter. Because of its location and its oil, it was simply too important to ignore. Allied forces moved in and occupied the country, even replacing Iran's leader with someone more favorable to their interests. From Iran's perspective, this wasn't cooperation, it was control. After the war, that feeling didn't disappear. In fact, it grew stronger. Iranians wanted control over their own resources and their own future. So in the early 1950s, they elected a leader who promised exactly that, and he delivered by nationalizing Iran's oil industry. But that decision didn't sit well with the West. In 1953, a coup backed by foreign intelligence removed him from power and replaced him with a ruler more aligned with Western interests. For many Iranians, this moment was unforgettable, because it proved that outside powers were willing to interfere directly in their country. The new ruler, known as the Shah, maintained strong ties with the United States. And on the surface, Iran appeared to be modernizing rapidly. Cities expanded, infrastructure improved, and the country seemed to be progressing. But beneath that progress, political freedoms were shrinking. Opposition was silenced, critics were punished, and dissatisfaction quietly spread across society. By the late 1970s, that dissatisfaction reached a breaking point. Massive protests erupted, millions of people took to the streets, and eventually, the system collapsed. The Shah fled the country. A completely new government took power, one that was deeply suspicious of the United States and openly opposed to it. Just like that, an ally became an enemy. Then came the moment that truly cemented the divide. In 1979, Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. Embassy and took dozens of Americans hostage, holding them for over a year. For the United States, it was a moment of humiliation and anger. For Iran, it was seen as resistance against decades of foreign interference. But regardless of perspective, the damage was permanent. Diplomatic relations were cut, and they have never fully recovered. Not long after, Iran was pulled into a devastating war with Iraq that lasted nearly a decade. During this time, the United States supported Iraq in various ways, further deepening the hostility. At the same time, tensions between Iran and the U.S. continued to rise through indirect clashes. Regional conflicts and tragic incidents like the shooting down of a civilian Iranian airliner, which killed hundreds of innocent people and intensified the mistrust even further. As the years went on, the conflict evolved. It was no longer just about past grievances or regional influence. It became centered around nuclear power. Iran began developing its nuclear program. The United States grew increasingly concerned about what that could mean for global security. After years of tension, negotiations finally led to a deal that limited Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for relief from economic sanctions. For a brief moment, it seemed like things might improve, but that moment didn't last. The agreement eventually collapsed, sanctions returned, and tensions quickly escalated once again. Then, in 2020, the world came closer than it had in years to witnessing a direct war between the two nations. A U.S. drone strike killed one of Iran's top military leaders, and Iran responded with missile attacks on American bases. For a brief moment, it felt like everything could spiral out of control. But somehow, both sides stepped back. War was avoided barely, and that's where things stand today. No full-scale conflict, but no real peace either. Just a fragile, uneasy balance shaped by decades of mistrust, conflict, and missed opportunities. Because in the end, this isn't just a disagreement between two countries, it's a story shaped by history itself, and it's still far from over.